Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. You already know who it is. It is your boy Lewis, and I'm once again back with another banger with yet another video. Make sure you guys do these three things, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to always receive the latest and greatest content. I truly appreciate you guys for always taking the time to watch my videos. In the end of each video, man, share this video. It'll only help the channel grow, man. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Sunday afternoon, I should say. So without further ado, let's hop right into this video. First and foremost, shout out to Mr. D Holloway, Mr. D Holloway 2 for this. He requested this morning. And I asked him if he wanted to do a video on Tim Duncan, and this is what this video is pertaining to as to why Tim Duncan is one of the most underappreciated players in NBA history. Now, where do I have Tim Duncan on my list? I have him number 6 all time of my top 10 list. If you want to go check out the video on my top 10 list of all-time great players, please do so and go check it out and scroll down to make sure. It was one of my earlier videos back in, I believe, December, if I'm not mistaken. But December or January, one of the two times that I did the video. But definitely check that video out as I break down why each player is at the position that they're in. But Tim Duncan, it's amazing to me how much credit he doesn't get for the impact that he had on the game of basketball. You're talking about a guy, big man, who won 5 championships in his career. He has a 5-1 NBA Finals record. That's 83%. Shout out to He Knows His Sport, as he says this, man. He feels in order to be in the pantheon of great players, you have to have 50% or better in the NBA Finals, and Tim Duncan is far above that. 83.3% in NBA Finals play, 5-1. And think, had he beaten LeBron James in 2013, if it wasn't for those unfortunate circumstances that happened, and Greg Popovich had not taken Tim Duncan out of that play where Chris Bosh kicked it out to Ray Allen for that 3 that saved the season for the Miami Heat, Duncan would have the same finals record as Michael Jordan, 6-0 in finals play. Like Michael Jordan, he would have won every finals he played in had it not been for that one. Let's see. He's a 2-time MVP, 2002 and 2003. 3-time finals MVP, 1999, 2003, and 2005. He was the MVP for the first 3 championships. He's made 15 All-NBA defensive selections, 8 first team, 7 second team. Take notes, LeBron. Sacrifice his stats for the good of the team and winning. Take notes, LeBron. Was the anchor on those great Spurs defensive teams. Take notes, LeBron. People forget that David Robinson ended up being a complimentary player to Tim Duncan, because David Robinson, even though he was an MVP, he was never really able to lead the San Antonio Spurs to the promised land, to the finals, and win a championship on his own as the best player on the team. He was the MVP in 1995, and he got absolutely smoked by Hakeem Olajuwon in the Western Conference Finals of '95. But once Tim Duncan got drafted, after David Robinson and I think Avery Johnson were out with injuries, along with Sean Elliott, Tim Duncan gets drafted number 1 overall. Immediately makes an impact, makes the All-Star team in his rookie season. That '98 All-Star game was phenomenal in terms of the amount of talent that was in there, both with young players and veterans. Wins a championship in just his second season in 1999 during the lockout, where the Spurs were tied with the Utah Jazz for the best record in the NBA at 37-13. This was the 50-game lockout season, where Tim Duncan in that postseason single-handedly beat a young Timberwolves team that had Kevin Garnett. He beat the up-and-coming Shaq and Kobe with the Lakers in the second round. As a matter of fact, swept them in the Western Conference semifinals. Western Conference Finals beat a very talented Portland Trailblazer, aka Jailblazers team. And they were 35-13, so I believe they were 3rd in the West. And then in the NBA Finals, they beat the Cinderella story New York Knicks, and the '99 Knicks are actually my favorite team out of all the Knicks teams for the run that they made as the number 8 seed that year. I don't think we're ever going to see that again. The run that 8 seeded Knicks did to make it to the finals that year. But you know, Tim Duncan, what did he average? I think 29 and 13. I think in the series, wins MVP. You know, for his first finals MVP in just his second season. He was part of #1 defensive teams with the Spurs for like a numerous amount of years. Constantly making playoffs. People forget. You know, he had he had Manu and Tony Parker. So you know, they won 3 championships together. So actually 4, I should say. 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2014. Tim Duncan was what I call a quiet leader. His actions on the court spoke louder than the words. Take notes, LeBron. I believe Tim Duncan is a 15-time All-Star. And even when he was ending his career in 2016, the Spurs with him still won 67 games. Now you have Kawhi Leonard and then you have LaMarcus Aldridge. That was a very good team. It's just they ran into that buzzsaw with Oklahoma City, and you know they just kind of never recovered. And Tim Duncan ended up retiring. It was kind of a surprise because he kind of announced it like after the season was over. I think Tim Duncan was not the type of person for attention. And I think part of the reason he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves is because he's not somebody who the media really talks about. Like, he's not somebody who's in the limelight. Like, he's not somebody, he's a man of few words. So, like, he's not somebody who's outspoken. But when you do, you know, speak to him, you know, you do listen. I mean, they call him the big fundamentals. I mean, he was very skilled in the post. Great player. His impact doesn't get talked about enough. Real Spurs fans know, shout out to San Antonio Spurs fans out there. Real G's know, man, what kind of beast Tim Duncan was. He sacrificed his numbers for winning. That shows great leadership. I mean, he sacrificed making more money to be able to have pieces come. And the Spurs are not a big market. We all know that because they're in Texas. But he sacrificed making more money elsewhere to win championships. He had a great coach in Greg Popovich, who Tim Duncan helped made Greg Popovich into a Hall of Fame coach. Let's get that clear, because Greg Popovich had no track record with Tim Duncan before Tim Duncan drafted. And the one season that Greg Popovich did have, he had a lot of players injured, and they only won 20 games. So I don't want to hear that, oh, Tim Duncan always had a Hall of Fame coach. They won a championship together. Greg Popovich had no track record. So let's get that out the way. But Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players in NBA history. And like I said, I have him number 6 on my list. But I think because he was not such a guy, you know, that was about the media, he was not a guy that, you know, drew attention to himself, is kind of why he doesn't really get talked about. Even though a lot of players say that he's the greatest power forward of all time. Now, I think in terms of offensively, I don't think he's the greatest. Defensively, I'm surprised he never won a Defensive Player of the Year award, because I definitely think he definitely deserved it. I mean, he has some of the most historic statistics in NBA Finals history that doesn't really get talked about. I mean, he knocked out Shaq and Kobe twice in the playoffs in '99 and 2003. I mean, he ended along with David Robinson and them, because people forget David Robinson became a Bill Russell and a complimentary big to Tim Duncan, because Tim Duncan was now quickly becoming the best player on the team. So David Robinson kind of did the dirty work, you know, getting the loose balls, you know, getting the rebounds, playing defense. Tim Duncan could do both of those things. He was a more two-way player at the center, at the power forward / center position. But I think that's what also he doesn't get recognition as kind of like the best power forward, because the thing was he also played center primarily too. So he's kind of a hybrid big when you really think about it. Because you got, in terms of like offensive power forwards, you got guys like Karl Malone and Charles Barkley. In his prime, I would choose Charles Barkley over Karl Malone and Tim Duncan. But I think in terms of two ways, in terms of both ends of the floor, I would put Tim Duncan above both Karl Malone and Charles Barkley. And don't get me wrong, both of those guys are beasts. You know, Malone is a 2-time MVP. Charles Barkley won an MVP in '93. No disrespect to those guys, but Tim Duncan was the real deal. And also Tim Duncan let the players do their job. And the crazy part was Tim Duncan adjusted to the new system that Greg Popovich put in terms of, since the eras were changing. I mean, let's face it, man. He beat LeBron James twice in the NBA Finals. I mean, 2007 and 2014, when 38-year-old Tim Duncan, past his prime, was still productively producing, playing still defense at 30. Listen, 38 years old, people. So I think because of the fact that if he was outspoken, like, and if he was like a polarizing figure, like, you know, around the world, I think Tim Duncan would have gotten much more recognition. I mean, like I said, real G's know, man. Like I said, players know. Tim Duncan was a quiet guy, but like I said, he led by example, and he's the definition of what a true leader is. I mean, he just did it in a quiet fashion. Leaders lead in different ways, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you got to understand. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, you come up, you lace those shoes, and you come out and work in practice, in the games, post game, playoffs, off seasons. Tim Duncan was always about the team. And he never made himself bigger than the team. I think that's what players respect most about Tim Duncan, especially the players that he played with. And David Robinson can tell you, without Tim Duncan, David Robinson is not sniffing an NBA championship. David Robinson won too, but that was with Tim Duncan being the best player. And shout out to the Admiral David Robinson for letting Tim Duncan be the best player on the team. So he deserves major props. Tony Parker says it all the time, you know, like, I wouldn't have won championships without Tim Duncan. Same thing with Manu Ginobili. It just tells you the impact he's had in that organization. Players have come and gone, but the one constant was Tim Duncan. I need to put respect on Tim Duncan's name, man. Once again, shout out to Mr. D. Holloway too, man, for telling me about this video, because once again, Tim Duncan deserves a lot more respect than he really gets credit for. And I hope that you guys shared this video. I want you to share it to Spurs fans, and I want you to share it to, you know, like I said, to people who are just fans of Tim Duncan in general, as to what kind of a player he was. And people forget this too about Tim Duncan. He was a free agent in the offseason. Tim Duncan had tore his ACL during the 2000 season. This was the Spurs trying to defend their title. Tim Duncan gets hurt. He's a free agent. The Orlando Magic were looking to get Tim Duncan. Doc Rivers decided to cancel the meeting with Tim Duncan while they were out at dinner during the 2000 offseason. Tracy McGrady did not know about this, and I think it was the time when he signed with Orlando. And remember, Orlando had just gotten Grant Hill too. So you think of what could have been with that three-headed monster in Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, and Tim Duncan. But the reason that Greg Popovich monitored Tim Duncan was because he felt that Tim Duncan was going to get a ton of injuries to where his career was going to be a lot shorter. So that's why Greg Popovich rested him a lot. In other words, Greg Popovich deserves a lot of credit for even making his career very more longevity. For Tim Duncan to having the longevity that he has. So a lot of credit is owed to Greg Popovich. But yeah, Tim Duncan was an amazing player. He wasn't flashy, but like I said, he was very fundamentally sound and very skilled. And like I said, y'all need to put respect on Tim Duncan's name, man. That dude was a monster. I wonder if Greg Popovich would have unleashed Tim Duncan, what kind of numbers would he would have been averaging? Because I think the best season he ever had, he averaged 25 and 12. And that was 2002, the year he won the MVP. In my opinion, Jason Kidd should have won the MVP that year because the Nets only won 26 games. They didn't have Kenyon Martin for the entire season. Jason Kidd just comes. They add Kenyon Martin back, being healthy, Kerry Kittles, and the Nets go from 26 to 52 wins in the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference, which kind of tells you, as great of a turnaround as that was, they were the #1 seed with 52 wins. The Sacramento Kings led the league with 61 wins that year. It just tells you the strength of the Western Conference. That's how long the Eastern Conference has been weak. The Eastern Conference, even before LeBron came into the league. There were great playoff games, don't get me wrong, but the East was much weaker than the West once it hit the 2000s. Like, and that's what it actually even got weaker from the year Michael Jordan left. Ratings went down when Jordan left the game. That's the indelible impact Michael Jordan left in the game. But, you know, I'm getting off topic, man. Back to Tim Duncan. You know, he's never gonna get enough credit. You know, he eliminated the Phoenix Suns twice after they were having 60 win seasons, top records in the West. Tim Duncan played his whole career in the Western Conference, man. That shit is like the steeplechase out west. They call it the dog days of the West. I mean, that's how tough the Western Conference is. And, you know, Tim Duncan, I'm telling you, man, he deserves his props for making that organization a winning organization. Obviously, it takes a team to win it, but his impact cannot be questioned. He made Greg Popovich the coach that he is, and Greg Popovich made Tim Duncan the player he is. But once again, man, this is why Tim Duncan deserves his respect. You know, All-Star MVP with Shaq in 2000. So once again, this is the Boy Lewis with another video. Tim Duncan, 25,000 points, 13,000 career rebounds. Tim Duncan, I believe, is also in the top 5 all-time in block shots too. I think he's over 2,000 if I'm not mistaken, 2,000 something. But it just lets you know what kind of impact Tim Duncan had on both ends. But like I said, if Greg Popovich did not prolong his career by resting him, we don't know how long Tim would have lasted in the NBA. But when he was in his prime, when he was healthy, that dude was a monster. But once again, this is your boy Lewis, man, with another one. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments on the career of Tim Duncan. I mean, should he deserve more consideration in terms of why he is an all-time great? Because I feel like he disrespected and he doesn't even really get mentioned. But once again, shout out to Mr. D. Holloway too, man. You know, that's why I have to throw that video out there. But, man, once again, man, bless up. One love, man. Peace. Thanks for watching.